While the White House is in damage control, following that damning report, as James was saying, the well-meaning elderly man with the poor memory, that's Joe Biden, and all these woes are piling up. What does it mean for, of course, Donald Trump? Well, I'm delighted to say that joining us now for the first time here on Outsiders is a former advisor to both the Bush and Trump administrations, Christian Whiton. Christian, great to have you here finally on Outsiders. We've been planning this get-together for a while, so it's great to have you with us this morning.
Great to be here. Thank you.
So what does all the shenanigans of the memory and the mixing Egypt and Mexico up and the border problems, what does this mean for Donald Trump where we stand today?
Well, I think it certainly helps Trump. Trump, of course, is himself no spring chicken, but by any fair comparison has tremendous stamina and mental acuity compared to President Biden. And it's sad. It's not good for the United States and its allies for the president, as Karine says, the president and the commander-in-chief, clearly beyond a state of minimum faculties necessary for this job. I mean, this is someone who might have to make a split-second decision about the use of nuclear weapons. Hopefully it never comes to that. But this is someone who does actually make decisions, real decisions about the use of lethal military force around the world, about the economy, things that are very important, and is simply incapable of doing so. This is frankly looking more and more like elder abuse. I can't believe his family hasn't stood up and said, listen, it's time to just cap it at one term. The Democrats, the window is closing. Really, January should have been the time for Biden to say, and one term was enough. He's going to step aside. The Democrats do have some capabilities to swap someone, but that window is narrowing unless they want to take it to a very messy convention.
Rita.
What does this mean for Donald Trump's legal woes? If he is found guilty for the documents he took, and given he was president, he could have declassified them, which Joe, as vice president, couldn't. That is just going to enrage the Republicans so much more, isn't it? Because we are going to see further evidence of this two-tier justice system.
Right, Rita, it looks very unfair. So here Joe Biden had a bunch of serious classified documents in his garage next to the Corvette, and that in contrast to Mar-a-Lago. And, it goes to this question, too, of what is intelligence for? The president, by our Constitution, is the commander-in-chief. This whole apparatus does not exist to serve the bureaucracy, ultimately exists to serve the president and the people he appoints as his top commanders and lieutenants. So, yes, Donald Trump, even by thinking it, could have actually declassified anything. I think you could make the argument anything classified during his presidency, he cannot be charged with mishandling because ultimately it's to serve him, not to serve the bureaucracy. Joe Biden, on the other hand, was vice president. He wasn't the president, didn't have automatic declassification authority. I think we've seen through this, and listen, I supported Ron DeSantis earlier. I thought the prosecution of Donald Trump would actually hurt him more than it did. It didn't. The American people view this as very unfair. The attempts to remove Trump from ballots in states that Joe Biden is going to win regardless, like here in Colorado or Hawaii or Maine, although maybe they'll put Maine into play because when you tell people they can't vote for someone, maybe they will. It just reinforces that the justice system here is unfair and has been politically stacked.
James.
One of the reports coming out of the White House, I think this was on Axios, said that some White House staffers were angry that he was allowed to go out at 8 p.m. after a long day, apparently, of doing whatever, and handle the press pack when he wasn't going to be at his best. But, I mean, I remember in 2016, Hillary Clinton had the 3 a.m. phone call ad. Doesn't this just really create an absolutely impregnable line of attack for the Republicans now that this guy is not on duty 24/7? He has only got a couple of good hours a day, and if you catch him at the wrong time, God knows what he's going to do.
Right. And of course, our adversaries are the Chinese, the Russians, or others, the North Koreans going to, wait for 9 a.m. on a good day to create a crisis, or is there going to be a financial crisis at that point? Now, I think it does just reinforce that that he's not in charge, which is problematic, because that means the White House staff is in charge. I think it has been all along. If you go back to why no one was fired for the debacle in Afghanistan, the first real crisis of this administration, it's because they sort of all decided, well, if we start firing some people for incompetence and poor performance, then where does it end? Where does it end in the military? Where does it end in the economy? This administration has had relatively little turnover, and I think it's unfortunate, because all of these people who were not elected. And it's important in our system to have someone at that very top who can make decisions, who can cut deals, who can go to Congress or speak directly to the American people. And that's what Joe Biden hasn't done. He hasn't gone to Congress and cut a deal on the budget. We still don't have a full year budget for the current fiscal year. And he hasn't explained to the American people why, for example, we're at war with Iran's proxies, and what we intend to accomplish and how we're going to win there. So it's bad. You have a very politically active, committed, progressive, activist White House staff that's really running the country.
So, Christian, one could also argue perhaps that Barack Obama might be there behind the scenes somewhere or other, but that's a different story. Just quickly before we go, the question I get asked most often is, can Donald Trump get through these 91 charges, these 4 very separate law cases? They're all different in their own way, but can he get through all of that craziness and win in November?
A year ago, I would have said no. Again, I supported Ron DeSantis in part because I thought the deep state, the prosecutions would win, but they've actually drawn support toward Trump. If he wins, he's head of the executive branch. By definition, he cannot prosecute himself. Any prosecutions, incarcerations, all of that has to stop. He can then pardon himself, and just with the supremacy clause of our Constitution, which puts our federal government above states on certain issues, I don't see how these states can continue. Who would have thought that New York was a backwater run by hick prosecutors and politicians? But apparently it is. You can get better justice in the backwaters of Mississippi and Alabama than you can in New York City or Atlanta now. I think all of this, it has to go away. The American people will have spoken, and he is the chief executive. He cannot perform those functions from jail. So obviously, this has to end, and he'll have to be free to perform his constitutional duties if he wins.
Very quickly, Rita.
Very quickly, give us your pick for Veep, and when are we going to see the end of Nikki Haley?
I think Haley, I don't understand why she's still in the race. If she's going to stick around to be humiliated in her own state. I think the president really is comfortable and likes Ben Carson. It's unclear who he's going to choose. I don't think he chooses Carson just because he's a black man. I think he actually really likes the guy. So you'll see someone like that.
Christian Whiton, thanks so much for coming on and chatting to us on Outsiders. I hope we can do it again, as we have a fascinating year in front of us. Thanks so much, Christian, for coming on here on Outsiders.